morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital, WESN, the only station in the nation broadcasted on HD. My name is Sean Michael Small. Once again, I am very happy and privileged to be able to share with you my thoughts and opinions on the important topics of the day. And first off, I'll just like to acknowledge, of course, that we are in the Lenten season. However, we're still unpacking what happened with regards to the recent carnival season. And there's an important reason why with regards to the global economic environment. That's going to be generally a topic that we're going to hit on multiple times in today's show. But to kick things off, we're going to start with the Daily Review. So, of course, we like to acknowledge, we mentioned a lot of the winners yesterday, but Road March was still being tabulated, and now we got the results. Bunji has taken the win. Bunji's Heartfelt was more or less, I think you could argue, ready for the road, whereas its closest competitor, Come Home, was not necessarily as ready for the road. In fact, I even saw it in just glancing at the coverage. I think it was at the Savannah at the time. The DJ started Come Home, and the crowd's energy dipped during the lull of the start of Nyla's song. I love this song. And first of all, let me say this. I think Heartfelt was a song that could have won Road March in just about any year, unless some spectacular, once-in-a-lifetime song dropped. I think Heartfelt would have been a contender in any year. It's unfortunate, I think, that a song that really wasn't crafted, I would say, for Road March came second. This is not blaming Nyla or saying she did anything wrong. It's just that the song did not seem that was what it was written to do. And yet, there was nobody else in contention, really. It's a hell of a thing. I like both songs. I think Come Home was a very beautifully written song. I do wish, because there was a road version, I do wish the road version might have been, and I don't know if the rules would have allowed for this, or I guess maybe you're supposed to put the road version up for Road March contention. How will the DJs play it? I don't know the technicalities of the behind the scenes. But she did have a road version, and I do wish that even that started off a little bit too low-key. I do wish that might have been mixed differently to give it energy from the start. But as it stands, we're nitpicking. Interesting thing to note, the great Machel Montano himself, somebody pointed out yesterday when the results came out that, well, he wasn't really in contention. This is Machel Montano. And it's not as though he wins Road March every year. And it could be that he was looking to go in a different direction this year. But at a time when he is potentially bearing some of the blame for the cancellation of Soca Monarch and the complaints about his fete, I'm not too sure if it was necessarily a good look for the mother of all carnivals, for the first carnival in 2 to 3 years, for his 40th Marshall Forte anniversary or what have you, that his own offerings seem to be granted. If he wanted to be niche and artistic, I'm all for that. Great. But he registered a song for Road March. It did okay. It did okay. But to what extent is he trying too hard, experimenting too much? And you know, I say that, but perhaps we need that. We need someone to be willing to take the risks. It's interesting because I do think the long and short is it leaves that part of the carnival industry up in the air. How will things move now in the future? Everybody had this pent-up desire for carnival, and I guess Road March is, for this year anyway, the penultimate expression of that. When people got on the road, for the first time in however many years, what's going to happen next year? And are we going to see growth, or are we just going to see more of the same? There's a reason why I asked that question. We'll get into that when our commentator comes in later. However, just to move on, still on Carnival, also relevant to our later discussion. Well, Big Mike got vexed and publicly called out the NCC, saying he's not coming to participate in judging next year. We're not doing this next year. He did that on the stage, from what I understand, in between songs that the DJ was playing. And his band members were also getting vexed because they had a long wait. They were in line, and then someone bumped in front of them. Typical Trinbagonian behavior. If you ever went on the ferry as a passenger to check in, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure that will be repeated in multiple situations where you have to line up for something, and there will always be some smart people that want to jump ahead of the line. Now, the band that is alleged to be the band that cut in front of him, I'm not necessarily going to put the blame on his feet. Where I am going to put most of the blame on is the organizers who would have authorized the band to move forward, who were responsible for controlling the situation, and that, of course, is the NCC. Gypsy has apologized. It's kind of, the problem with apologies is, in your personal life, it's one thing to apologize in your personal life. Fine, you know, we make up, we're cool, we could move on as friends, as family, as loved ones, as acquaintances, whatever. But in a professional relationship like this, and we're not even talking about co-workers, we're talking about a major event, and I'm selling an experience to people, and you, whether intentional or unintentional, are ruining the experience of my patrons. Man, of course, is going to be upset. The thing also with things like this is, Carnival is, there's a lot of things about art and culture which is subjective. So there were people who thought, you know, certain songs are more favored, certain artists are more favored by the DJs, by radio. You know, that's why the cancellation of Soca Monarch, well, that's why they took the line of thought where, well, you cancel Soca Monarch, what about the new upcoming artists? Technically, Soca Monarch is not really, on the surface, meant for that. That's just what it became. So I could understand the band leaders' claims that, hey, what is with these favored bands getting preferential treatment? And this is what Mr. Peters needs to understand. It doesn't have to be true. But like political situations, the perception by the public will cloud reality. And if you want to not have to deal with it, you have to ensure that things don't go wrong. And an apology after the fact does not help me recoup the lost experience, the time wasted, the wait, the frustration of myself and my patrons if I am a band leader and I just got pushed because someone cut in front of me in the line. Why does this matter? Well, I'll just preview the topic that we'll speak to about at the end of the hour. We're at a time now when I think sooner rather than later, because we always talk about diversification, sooner rather than later though, we're going to have to actually do something about diversification. We could no longer just pay lip service and kind of just throw it out there and pretend and do a song and a dance, and you know, the government talks about diversification, the opposition talks about diversification, all the other political parties talk about diversification, the economists, the private sector. Nobody really does anything about it, except some people on a very small scale, but outside of that, nobody really does anything about it. I don't think we could afford that anymore. And when we have situations like this is one situation. However, how many questions about the carnival experience and how well it was run and how well it was put off, how many questions do we have about it? And I get it. If you have any understanding about events, and believe you me, Carnival and TNT is one of the biggest events that anybody will ever see in their lifetime. But while it is true that you will always have situations in Carnival, problems will come up, no event will run perfectly on autopilot. The point is that the people running the event have to be ready, willing, able to see about those problems in the moment, not to apologize after the fact. And I think now more than ever, the product that is Carnival is showing its potential on a global stage in more than one way, but it comes back to the thought that maybe we're holding ourselves back. We are getting in our own way to really and truly pushing Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, because now it looks like they're going to be two separate things, but that's fine. But to push Trinidad and Tobago Carnival and the various aspects of the culture and the art form, because it's not just limited to Carnival Monday and Tuesday and the fetes leading up to it. There's also the art form of the music, the art form of the costume making, of the storytelling. All of these various things, we're not really supporting it, pushing it. And at a time where we need to look at diversification, these things could be key with regards to tourism. We already see the potential because when fetes prices are given, listed in US prices, not TT, US, we know what it was for. It was for the people outside, whether diaspora or not, mostly diaspora. And therein lies my issue. We're not doing enough to actually attract a bigger market. The flip side of that is, could we handle it? Right now, I don't know, but I do know we need to get our act together if we want to have that chance. Okay, moving on. I don't want to necessarily miss out on this last story. Switching gears a little bit, not necessarily going to talk about everything going to be about Carnival, but switching gears. Well, Farley has basically said no comment on what was going on in the PDP. A week or two before Carnival, there was the whole drama between Mr. Watson Duke and who I believe to be the last deputy political leader in his party. I could be wrong, but that would be the only one that I would remember off the top of my head. Kizelle Jackson, she resigned. When she resigned, she gave a press release that implied things, and then Mr. Duke, of course, had the brilliance of confirming all of those things and more. Basically, outing himself as a cheater. And outing the fact that he cheated on his wife not just once or twice. We're talking about over a long period of time. I'm not even entirely sure how long, because I do believe he did mention that she met Kizelle Jackson before the party even formed, potentially, I think, when he was still president of the PSA, if my memory serves correct, on his hour-long or near hour-long video. So it's heavily implied that this is not new. This is not a few days. This is not a few weeks. One could argue this would be probably as old as the PDP. And Farley has decided to say no comment. I don't want nothing to do with that. I don't want to say nothing about that. You wanna hear about what's going on with the PDP? Ask the chairman, right? I mean, he could also have said ask the dog, because it's chairman, the dog, and Duke. That's who started the party. The chairman of the PDP, I guess, is the last man standing with regards to Duke's defense. That is to say, someone who will speak up for Mr. Duke himself. Now, I'll say this. I understand what the chief secretary of the THA is doing. First of all, why involve yourself in somebody's mess? It has nothing to do with you. Directly. The problem is, and I've said this before when this happened, it has now made me further question the judgment of one Watson Solomon Duke, that he is going to literally attempt to use what essentially is, in biblical terms, his sins. Biblical terms. We are in Lent, Mr. Duke. Theologically speaking, I'm pretty sure thou shalt not commit adultery is implied there in not coveting. But biblically, he's trying to use his sins as his defense. It's kind of crazy. And of course, Ms. Jackson, she has made further social media posts that we have not highlighted because, let's just say we chose not to do so. The issue is, Mr. Augustine, Dr. B. Israel, y'all did, with what I think to be two eyes wide open, agree to join with Mr. Duke and follow Mr. Duke. And to be fair, with the last THA election, he did his part. And by doing his part, he was mostly silent. It's in line with his track record. Don't let him speak is the best way forward. And I think, politically speaking, all of the analysts and opinion people were looking at that election and saying, well, you know, maybe this might just work if Duke is going to show restraint. And then, of course, you know, Duke decided to die on the hill of Roxborough dancers and the illegal appropriation of funds, or the illegal procedure for the appropriation of public funds. And therein lies the problem. I understand, Chief Sec, why you don't want to comment about it, and for the most part I agree, but to some extent you're going to have to figure out a way to address it. You can't just be silent about it, because at one point all 13 of y'all, plus the council, the appointed councillors, chose to follow that guy. And now, to some extent, him looking bad does make you look a little bit bad. So I would say to some extent you need to address it. He is still in the THA as well. I don't know if you could leave it alone. I don't know if that's going to really solve that issue. I don't think you could necessarily divorce yourself completely from him. At least not yet. Maybe if he sinks himself, that'll be different. But folks, I am well over time. We have to take a break. When we come back, I'll get with my commentator. We'll have that discussion about why I think Carnival, we need to do more with Carnival. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WSN, your content capital.
One in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime.
A genetic type of hereditary as well, breast cancer,
right,
which is due to abnormality in the genes. People are born with that abnormality in the gene, and they have that predisposition to developing cancer at an early age.
And a mom and a sister and a strong genetic component in my family for breast cancer. Should I start screening in my 20s? What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinidad in Begonia who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Hold on up. Welcome back to Talking Point. And of course, we did not necessarily have the good lady yesterday, but we have her today. And I am speaking of the former Minister of Finance, Karen Nceisera. But before we... Okay, yes, you're there. Hi, good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Sean. Good morning to your listeners. Always happy to be with you. I'm not here on Hump Day.
Yes.
I'm here on Thursday and always happy to be with WESN.
So we had an interesting discussion earlier on in the week leading out of Carnival, and I've been previewing it in the first 20 minutes of the show, in that I've been pointing out certain things that are concerning to me because I feel as though we need to potentially take Carnival as a business, as an industry, even more seriously than we're already taking. And to be fair to all of the stakeholders, one could argue Carnival has grown to the point where perhaps all the old ways of doing things in the 70s and the 60s and even the 80s and 90s, it might not be efficient enough because it has grown beyond that scope in some aspects. But recently, you've pointed this out to me, and it's been on my radar, but I didn't necessarily, I wasn't necessarily that alarmed by it. The price of gas and energy is dropping, and we are still dependent on those prices being high enough to give us the revenue, to give us the foreign exchange. Right now, it seems as though Europe has figured out how to be without Putin and Russia's natural gas. Apparently, even in January, the Wall Street Journal reported that their storage, their demand for gas dropped so low that production was able to increase their reserves, whereas normally in winter, they have to tap into the reserves because the production can't keep up. So it's an interesting time, but it does mean that we have to wonder now. Yes, some of the deals might be hedged and they're locked in the short term. But in the long run, the budgeted price of gas, the budgeted price of gas from this year's budget is about $3 per unit, and it's going to be $2. So once again, the Minister of Finance has managed to, it's not necessarily his fault this time. But Karen, your concerns now with regards to energy prices dropping?
Yeah, I think you sort of summed up the real issue. And I think the real issue, it continues to be the dependency on a very volatile product. And if we question the volatility of energy prices, especially natural gas, which was seen in a way as being the savior because it was the cleanest of the the what do we say, the natural
fossil
fuels, and you saw that the European countries in particular, United States also, were trying to move away from dependency on natural gas. And what we have seen, and this is what kind of worries me, is I took a quick look at the January bulletin from the central bank, and and the forecasting, which they'd have to do some forecasting. But when you look at the price of natural gas, the minister put it at $6. I think there's an article in one of the newspapers talking about the price of natural gas being much less than anticipated, but it is really very much less because it has been trading at 2 something. Now, I know they have the better prices with LNG, and LNG is king now. But the point of the matter is, which you have said, and which I did look up, I said, but why is the natural gas prices continuing to fall? Is this is the volatility we talk about. And that has a lot to do with the geopolitics. But I did learn, for example, for Europe, they have increased their inventory of natural gas from the average of 45% in 2022 to 65%. They are burning less natural gas, which seems to be a common decision, but also they're getting their supply of natural gas from the United States and Qatar, so reducing their dependency on Russia, which at the end of the day, what I am really saying is that we all know that we are not price takers. We are price takers, not price makers. And we cannot continue to base our economy on a product that is the mainstay that is so very volatile. We saw our Prime Minister go to the Energy Forum at Guyana and talking about selling the refinery. Who's buying that refinery? Nobody wants to buy that refinery, and that he well knows. And so you're looking at a refinery that is, a lost cause, really. And you're looking at also oil prices. I haven't mentioned oil prices, but he put oil prices at $92.50, I think, around there. And oil prices have been going at about $70, $74. And we have, as you know, 3 components of the Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Holdings Limited, one of which is you have Paria and we have Heritage. And the Heritage component is the part with exploration and production. So if the prices of oil are dropping, and then Paria, we have to import all our refined fuel because we do not have a refinery that's working. And even though, let me just finally say, even though De Novo and BP Zandoli have increased their production, they did that at a time when, in my view, prices of natural gas were going at $5, $6, $7. Look what's happening now. And it doesn't seem as it's going to turn around because America, United States, and Europe, they're one of the major crises for them is controlling inflation. Mm-hmm. And one of the main drivers of their inflation is energy and food. And they're not going to allow that to continue, not with Russia getting the thing. So in the end, that is my point, that if we ever thought that we needed to move away from our dependency on energy and energy, I think we're seeing it being played out on the world stage right now.
Well, and I think there's 2 issues. First of all, what you've just said there, what immediately came to mind at first was, well, the Dragon deal might not really be all that beneficial as we would have hoped. It might still give us something, but even then, I think we've seen this with gold, diamonds, rare earth metals, and oil reserves. When the price goes too low, some people just close up shop. They say, I might be operating at a loss. This doesn't make sense. These are resources that are finite. Why am I going to operate at a loss and extract my resources and sell them at a loss? I'll just close up shop. So in theory, we could do that. The problem is, that might be a long-term solution to let's not lose on our operation, but it doesn't necessarily help us in the short run. And the reason why I say that is the second thing I thought of. the inflation trickles down to us with regards to the food inflation. One of the problems with the energy sector not earning enough revenue, and I think this is something that people really don't necessarily fully grasp. It's not just the revenue that we want, it's also the foreign exchange. We have no other real way to earn foreign exchange in that quantity, and we had this problem before COVID with foreign exchange. And it was messing up our balance of trade. So when you throw food inflation on top of it, I don't even want to think about how bad it could get.
And talking about the energy prices, which, you know, it's noteworthy. And of course, I don't have an insight into what is going on in the government. So I say it from outside and reading the data that's available to one. But the very fact that the Prime Minister had a very muted response to the Dragon Field, which was supposed to be such a game changer, is one that should make one sit up and listen when he says we're not out of the woods. And he knows that because it takes time to monetize the natural gas, which I know Keaton had been speaking about on one of these shows when I was being very positive about it. But it is a fact that they have only been given a 2-year license by the government. They've also said there can be no exchange in cash, which is what Venezuela is starved from. They don't have the cash to purchase goods and services and food and whatever they need to. So those are two things that are negative. And the fact that you have this 2-year license hanging over your head, what does it mean? On the 3rd year, are you going to now say, well, the license is over and we're going to have to renegotiate? That's not a good position to put a country in. But more importantly, I suspect, I do not know, but I do not think that when they went to both Texas and when they negotiated with Maduro in Venezuela, that the price of gas that they negotiated was as low as 2 something. Mm-hmm. I don't believe they did that. Mm-hmm. And if that is not the case, what happens is that the gas Shell builds the pipeline if they still go. And you made a good point. You said that people will pack up, and the people you're talking about pack up are the shareholders. The shareholders are going as they started doing when we saw oil and gas prices starting to collapse. They saw that the big companies were trying to pull out. Then LNG became our savior because of the Ukraine-Russia war. Then all of a sudden, the transportation of natural gas, the best way to do it geopolitically and every other way was through the LNG. And of course, that needs expertise. You need to build a special platform. You need to build a special ship. And we had done that for years. So that was a bit of a savior for us. But we cannot continue to do that. And I know the Prime Minister recognizes that. We got no takers for that gas, for the refinery. Nobody wants the refinery. And he knows that. So we have to face reality. I don't know if you remember, but the president of Paria, Newman George, came out and said that there was the refined fuel and all the gas. I don't know who is providing us with it, but they were holding back because they said they were owed $500 million. I suppose this was in TT dollars. And at that point in time, the Minister of Finance had not released the funds. But it wasn't just $500 million. They were in the red for over $800 million. So a lot of people were saying, how could you say that we had a positive, it was not a negative GDP when included in your maths, you did not include the performance of Paria. And for Newman George to have that letter released, because somebody released that letter to the media, that we found out that he literally could not pay. And we were supposed to be supplying not only our market, but supplying the Caribbean region. So when you see Paria going through those kinds of real challenges, when you see nobody wanting your refinery, when you see the expiration of oil and gas, and remember the deep water rounds, think there were 21 and only 4 were taken up. And that was when gas prices were still high. I mean, when you see all of that going on, you have to understand that we cannot simply continue this dependency on energy prices. We just cannot continue.
Now, the irony of the situation is, it is the push for green energy that the world was moving away from fossil fuels, and to some extent successfully. Before COVID and the Ukraine war, the price of oil dropped to some ridiculous amount of money. Natural gas was, while I don't think it was at $2, it wasn't trading at $2, but it might have been at most $3. And we might see this volatility kind of slingshot us back in the future. But wouldn't we potentially just be repeating the mistakes of the past? I think this, more than ever, we have literally been in a time period where we saw the lows and then a high and then lows again. And I don't know if this is not a message to say, look, you can't bank on these things, you know, sustaining you for any period of time right now. You just can't, because the politics over energy is so complex right now. And things will change on a whim of the big players from the Middle East to Europe to America to Southeast Asia.
It's not only that, but as we have learned, our gas fields are mature. And what mature means is that we have monetized our gas fields. And I think one of them, there's a particular phraseology that was used to explain that particular. I know there's the De Novo one, I know there's the Zandoli, and I know there's another one that came on stream. But there's one, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but what they talk, the way that they describe it, what I was told is when you talk about monetizing that natural gas, it's using a vacuum cleaner to go and pull up all the natural gas that's deep down, and that costs money. Is it worth it? And by the way, when the minister fixed the budget for this period, he was very careful to explain how he came to his figures. So whilst you are saying that oil gas prices are what they are, he anticipated at that time, he put the gas price at $6. And that was because gas prices were obviously trading at a higher price than $6, because that's what the ministries of finance do. They take a conservative position because there's a mid-year review, and a lot of ministries may not get what they want. And they may, if things get better than anticipated, taking a conservative position when there's a mid-year review, if things are better than anticipated, or hopefully, then they get the money that they've been asking for. So even with oil, he tried to justify the 92.50. He quoted World Bank, he quoted this, he quoted that. But every year he gets it wrong. There's never been a year that this man has gotten it right. Not one year. How could you get it wrong every single year? And I just wanted to say it also, Kevin Ramram, for whom I have a lot of respect. And actually I went back and looked, because I said, I wonder if he's being a little too harsh. No, he wasn't being too harsh. As of 2015 to the current period, we've been in a negative growth. Now, to be fair, the world outlook, at least when reading the January report from the Central Bank, to be fair, the outlook for many of the so-called developed countries, other than perhaps Ghana, but Ghana is developing, and China is not. The GDP, the growth is not going there. But even though they don't have the growth, they have controlled their inflation. And when you are talking about inflation, inflation is not like a nice technical term, but what it means is your purchasing power. And if your salary and your income has not increased, and you are paying more, and it's food we're talking about, effectively your salary has been reduced. Your ability to survive has been reduced. And as I have said on your show already, and in the January report, they did say that the food inflation year on year within a short period of time. Just that, not the headline, the food inflation, they pulled it out, was over 13% in a short period of time. And from 2015, according to Dr. Hussain, I hope he doesn't mind me quoting him, he's either 45 or 46%. Who is facing the supermarket groceries with that? Who is facing that? There is so much in this country.
Well, Karen, we're overdue for a break. When we come back, though, there's a part 2 to this discussion. One aspect about moving forward that we want to get into. So, folks, stay tuned. This is Talking Point. Karen, this is Shera, Sean Michael Small. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website, www.fanzoneTT.com, for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, now we transition back, and I've been hinting at this from the start of the show. This is the cause. The cause of why we wanted to get to this point was what we just spoke about. Our energy revenue. It looks like we're going to be in trouble again. We've had about 4, 5, or maybe almost 7 years of that just before this war in Ukraine in various iterations. And looking at how Carnival unfolded, you know, Karen, we were talking, you know, International Soca Monarch, Marshall's Fete on Fantastic Friday, and then just how the economics of Carnival was playing out. You know, you hear some complaints from Tuco about Calypso tents, band leaders here, band leaders in Tobago, but the long and short is it seems as though while Bunji's song was ready for the Road on One Road March, our Carnival, I don't think, is ready for the globe. I mean, we do have people coming in, but to what extent is it like an industry? And I see the potential, and I think you see the potential, but to me it seems as though we just lack the focus to get this thing in a bigger way, because it could contribute. It might not make up for all of the lack of energy revenue, but it could contribute significantly to the country. Just look at the rest of the Lesser Antilles. They survive off of tourism.
Yeah, I actually, CSO published some of the data from the last carnival and the number of visitors they had, and they did an average of spend by each visitor. And I can't remember the figures now, but it was over $400 and something million, they said, that was spent during the carnival. But what we had spoken about, we talk about carnival because carnival just finished, but carnival is just only a small part, an important small part, obviously, of the whole push towards creating a cultural tourism, which we have a Ministry of Tourism and Culture. So there's a recognition that we should be creating opportunities not only for the hoteliers, but the Airbnbs. There's so many opportunities that, we could go on and on. And one of the things I did want to speak about, which I know is a little controversial, and so, Sean, I'm not saying that I have come to the definitive position on it, because I make a lot of enemies here, including yourself. You might not agree with me. But I found, and I'm saying this carefully, hopefully, that I think that part of the reason is that the government itself has not really committed to Carnival as a mechanism for earning foreign exchange. They have not really made that not only Carnival, but our culture. So Carnival has just passed, so I'm talking about Carnival, but of course it's far more than that. But if we just focus on the Carnival, what disturbed me was, I know there were a lot of complaints about the Marshall Friday and the 3 hours and all of that. And I know I should, many people have written about it, but that was not really what, to me, I focused on. What I felt was emblematic or symptomatic of the whole underlying problem with the government's commitment to creating a new opportunity and a real opportunity that a lot of the other islands make their GDP on, which is tourism. We have a special product, not just Carnival, but others, was the Carnival Friday. Why do I say that? And all the Marshall Montano lovers, I don't dislike him. It's not personal, but then, people take it personally. I went back and looked it up just to make sure that I hopefully was not saying the wrong thing. But just before COVID, he had just gotten married, and he did announce that his next venture was going to be on a Friday, the Carnival Friday, and calling it from Lagos to Port of Spain. So he telegraphed to the national community and to the government that he was taking the Carnival Friday. Now, why is that important? Because that Friday is the Friday with the Soca Monarch. Now, a lot of people would say, and we can understand why people may say, well, the Carnival Friday was dead anyhow. But why was it dying? Because people like Marshall and Kez did not participate, even if they came on as guest artists to support the young artists that are coming forward. And that is part of our problem. I'm not going to say that Marshall is wrong or Kez is wrong. I'm going to say something is wrong. Something is wrong where you can't see that what you did, you put the death knell. You contributed. You did not put it, but you put the death knell because the government said, NCC said, they were not putting $10 million into what they said was a private venture. But as Wharton Lake has said, Jeffrey Wharton Lake and Mr. Raghunanan has said, and we all know, it is the platform for these young artists to get jobs because that's how they make their money. Everybody knows that after Carnival, they line up job after job after job. All of the islands, all of their carnivals, the carnivals in Miami, the carnival in Toronto, the carnival in UK, this is how they make their money and that is their platform. So do not pretend that the carnival thing is a waste of time because it's financially, that you cannot look at it. We are building and growing, hopefully we want to grow a new source of foreign exchange because we know the energy sector cannot do it. And we have something that nobody else has. And so when Marshall did what he did, in my respectful opinion, as an artist, it's an artist, so which is the correct expression. He can get upset with me, and he's entitled to feel upset, and he can justify what he wants to justify. But to me, he telegraphed that is the end of Soca Monarch. And he took bread out of the mouth of so many young artists who are depending on that to give them a platform, which he has to know because he is an artist. You have made it, Marshall. You don't even need it anymore. You have your chocolate, you have your thing, and all praises to you. I admire you tremendously. But my God, it looks as though everybody is on their own thing. And I blame the government because the government is the one to come forward and say, listen, are we going to be serious about this thing? Are we going to tax the bands? I don't know how they tax the bands. I don't know how they tax the trucks, that thing. I don't know how they tax them. I don't know. I'm saying I don't know. I don't know how they tax the caterers who provide food for all of these bands. I don't know how they tax them. How much tax do they get from that? Or is the tax only from the hotels? What about the Airbnbs? How is that benefiting? And the responsibility for that is the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. And what Marshall did, in my respectful opinion, the 6 hours, the 3 hours, whatever the hours and hours.
Oh, it's more than that. It was more than that.
He contributed, and he's too intelligent and too educated and too smart and too young to soca since he's 10, not to understand the impact of what he did. And I'm very, very disappointed in him, but more disappointed in the government, as usual.
Let me be quick. First of all, with regards to taxation on revenue, here's a little tidbit. From what I understand, villas in Tobago don't pay tax on their revenue, so they could undercut hotels, big and small. And that's just the reality of it. That's one way that the environment is unbalanced and unhealthy, just with regards to tourism. But with regards to Soca Monarch and Carnival on a whole, I agree with you for the most part. Soca Monarch should be the platform where the winner is seen as one of the top artists for that year and in the short run. But it seems as though certain artists, regardless of their placing in Soca Monarch, they could just ignore the results. It's the winner that comes after them does not seem, there's no risk of being supplanted, especially for Marshall to some extent, Kes to some extent, Bunji, and so on and so on. And I understand it. They had reputations with regards to, well, the former Marshall Monday, Kes Tuesday. Now, here's the thing. Ironically, both Kes and Marshall's big fets for the year, they did not necessarily come off very well, especially Marshall's fete. Especially. And my thing is, I understand. I'm not going to say, I really don't want to blame Marshall for Soca Monarch for the most part because he's one man. If we want to blame all of the big shots collectively, fine. I'm on board with that. However, when you say that it was the nail in the coffin, I will agree with that to some extent, or at least I'll recognize the fact that the argument could be made. But what makes it worse for me is you're going to do that to Soca Monarch, and then your own offering is going to be so subpar, and it sets the industry, to me, it sets the industry back when you do something like this. If you're not ready to have a premier event done in a fantastic way, make way for somebody else. Don't sabotage the competition.
Sean, you know what? I know because we only have about a few minutes on it, and I don't want to do what I'm doing, which is, I just do need to make these 2 points too.
Quick.
Marshall knew that Friday was the Monarch Day. So you can't even compare Kes or Bunji because they didn't take away any bread from anybody, right? And he did that 3 years ago. He said that's what he was going to do. And I think that, to me, he has to understand, I'm not only blaming him. I'm blaming the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. I'm blaming them, but it also is symptomatic of the problem why we cannot get culture and tourism. And we haven't talked about chutney soca. We have not talked about all the other elements of food or drink. There's so much to it, but Carnival just finished. And I would just say to Marshall that I thought that was, as an artist, that was a very selfish thing that you did.
Yeah, I mean, just folks, maybe in case you're not following what it is we're saying, because we've spoken about this so much off air. The thing is, look at the environment that's left. The artists compete and undercut each other, and we hear rumors about sabotaging each other and who don't like who, right? And then now, it's not as though what the products we end up getting are spectacular and world-class. And to be fair, Marshall did say some of the issues with his FET was due to what he wasn't allowed to do and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's your FET. You're responsible for your FET, for who you hire, for the elements you choose. And more importantly, this is the environment now that we have fostered, as opposed to the government fostering an industry that is successful, that rewards success, that is based off of merit, and that pushes innovation.
And builds. You can't expect the first year, and that's the other thing too, or the first year is supposed to succeed. No, I don't know any businessman who has been successful. You talk to any businessman, and people do as though they became wealthy last year. They tell you 20, 30 years they've been in the vineyard. So you can't expect to take a new product and in 1 year and say, oh, well, it's not working. You're not trying hard enough.
Yes.
And what Marshall did was what he felt that he could do because his system allows it. And I was disappointed in it.
Well, folks, we have to break for news on the hour. And this might be something that we will come back to again because there's more here. Tourism and culture is a topic Karen has had on the back burner like a year and a half ago. I think in summer of 2021, we were talking about this topic. So we're hoping to get to it at some point down the line. Of course, there's also tourism in Tobago and culture of Tobago that is included in our discussion. We won't leave you alone. But News on the Hour is next. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines and hear from you, the viewer. We'll be right back here on Talking Point on WESN HD, your content capital.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
The perfect mix of news, current affairs, talk, debate, mature discussions, comedy and sports. Only at WESN, the content capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And just before we open up the phone lines, a recap of what we spoke about before. Of course, Karen came in, we spoke about the economy, the future outlook with the volatile energy prices are not good. So we went into a conversation with regards to Carnival. Karen and I do feel that the Carnival has the potential, but it's so untapped. There's so much more we could do with it, and we're not doing enough. And now, I also did mention earlier on the program before Karen joined me, of course, the Road March winner, that is to say, Bunji Garlin, hard fet. It was ready for the road. It is a song, I think it is probably a song that will go far beyond this year. Karen, what do you think about Bunji's win?
I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. I love Nyla Blackman. I think she could be the next Rihanna. She gets the right person. And I hope, I wish Jay-Z would take on because she has all the qualities that a Rihanna has. I have felt that about her for many years. And I wish that she does make it big on the big stage. I think, you look at it, it's Nicki Minaj from Trinidad, Rihanna from Barbados, Beyonce's connections are Bahamian. She has all the things that people like. She has a sweet voice, has an outstanding voice. The lyrics were absolutely beautiful, but it wasn't a Road March thing. And I know Skinny Fabulous is from St. Vincent. My family lives in St. Vincent. So, you know, but you can't beat hard. You just could not be Bunji. You just could not be Bunji. So I just want to tell you, Nyla, I wish somebody would really discover you. I wish that Beyonce, what's his name, Jay-Z, would come and support you because you have all the makings to be an international star. That's my view of you. But Road March, no, not the Road March this year. Sorry, but I love you.
I mean, that's an interesting point, and I actually I do see where you're coming from, and, you know, one could hope that it could happen. But folks, let's open up the phone lines, hear from you, the viewer. Before we do that, though, I have the question of the day. Of course, we have to acknowledge that it is the start of Lent. So for all of you Roman Catholics out there or observants of Lent, I do want to ask, question of the day. And of course, it might seem obvious, but I do want to ask, what are you observants giving up for Lent this year? It is the time after all the revelry and the bacchanal to abstain, to now I don't want to say reaffirm, but to now perhaps give up the excess and maybe be more introspective into your life. There are many things and many ways you could do it, many things that you could give up. The Archbishop did say, well, why don't you abstain from negativity? And I can understand where he's coming from, but Archbishop, these are hard times, and you know, practicality might require a little bit of negative vocabulary in order to accurately describe what's going on. But with that said, what are you giving up for Lent, folks? And of course, we open the phone lines. We want to hear from you, the viewer, with regards to falling energy prices, with regards to the untapped potential of Carnival. Of course, there's still the ongoing crime situation, the PDP situation, whatever you have to say, whatever you want to speak about. How is things going in your neck of the woods right now? What is your outlook moving forward? Call in, let us know what you have to say. And of course, as I always would say, or my co-host would say for me, please do not wait for the 11th hour, because I could already see this happening where people will call back to back at 7:20. We have our first caller from San Fernando. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Morning, Karen.
Morning.
You know, I am with respect to Trinidad and Tobago economy, what I am worried about is these budget deficits that we keep incurring every year, and it seems as if the government seems to know exactly where the big well is with the money that they keep running these deficits, and we're going to handle it. I am worried about the future in light of just what you all spoke about in terms of the economy, energy. We're not doing enough in the other parts of the economy to diversify, and we keep increasing these budget deficits every year. That's one. Secondly, with respect to the Soca Monarch, this is one morning I have to disagree with you all about what Karen talked about.
Okay.
You all put a burden on Machel Montano, which, as far as I'm concerned, is unnecessary and uncalled for, because Soca Monarch is also a private event, and there were things before Soca Monarch on a Carnival Friday before Soca Monarch came. Soca Monarch came, and Mr. Monroe and they brought a product that is no longer relevant because it has been dying for the last 6 or 7 years. And so to ask the government for $10 million to host an event on the pretext that it is about the culture, fine, but it's a private event, and they will offer $3 million, and they couldn't do it with $3 million.
Well, caller, ultimately, yes, we did put the blame on the government for creating the environment that allowed all of these things to unfold the way they did.
Well, and I'm not going to put the blame on the government either, Sean, because let me tell you something. I used to work for, when Soca Monarch came out, came out, I worked for a company that was one of the major sponsors of this Soca Monarch.
Okay.
And at that time, you know why the company pulled out? Mr. Monroe and we were giving money into this project, and we were getting complaints from the artists as to the length of time they were getting their prize money. They would get their prize money in October and November, sometimes January the following year, and we would put that money in January of the carnival, or the year of the carnival, and we pulled out because of reputation. So they have been mismanaging that product for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Well, I mean, and I cannot fault you for your stance, and I agree with you to whatever extent we could reconcile the two perspectives. I definitely agree with you, because like I said, it was a dying brand. You could make the argument Marshall put the nail in the coffin, but at the end of the day, he didn't necessarily get that ball rolling. Somebody else is responsible for that.
Yeah, we're not blaming him. We're not blaming. What we're just saying is that is symbolic of the overall problem with the carnival
Yes,
and the government's
maybe that's the better way to put
responsibility.
it.
I think that's the issue there.
We have another caller. Sorry.
Yeah, morning.
Morning, caller.
Yeah, morning. Calling from Davide. Wonderful program. Morning to you and Karen.
Morning, morning.
Morning. With the whole thing about entrepreneurs versus business persons, a businessman. Marshall Montano is a businessman, and he looked for opportunities in business without any form of ethics. The entrepreneur might be very ethical in his practices. So I'm saying the industry that he is working in and competing in is a dog-eat-dog industry. Is a survival of the fittest. And the businessman saw an opportunity, and he grasped at it. So I think that any other businessman might have done the same thing had they had the capital and the wherewithal to do it. So wonderful program, guys, but I can't agree with you all this morning on the whole issue with Marshall Montano. Thank you very much.
I mean, I could accept that as well. Yeah, well, I could accept that, caller, because you're right. But then again, it goes back to the ultimate point that we were making, the environment. And I'm not saying that the government has to control all the details, and that's not what Karen is saying either, but the environment that allows this dog-eat-dog industry to continue without any sort of influence or regulation or what have you. I mean, there ought to be a law that says if I sponsor Soca Monarch, the prize money should not take 6 months to a year to be given out. You know?
And NCC is also guilty of that, huh? You know, it's not just the private
I mean,
thing.
yes.
NCC is very guilty of that.
For those who don't know, government is late on payments. That's one of the issues of being a contractor with the government.
But I'm talking about for carnival events. They take so long. Sometimes they tell you, I haven't got my car yet. I haven't gotten this yet. So, you know, anyway, we don't want to go to the blame game. You have made a point. It was a good point.
We have a caller from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Sean and Ms. Teixeira. You know, we understand that every institution in this country is corrupted. How does we deal with that? What is the solution? You know, we just come out here every day and talk about all the problems, but what is the solution to the problems that we have in today? How does we solve it? Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if Karen, if you heard that, but basically
I did that.
The caller was asking how do we solve corruption? He was saying every institution, well, he said every institution is corrupted. I would say every institution seems corrupted to some degree or another. How do we solve it?
I can give you one answer.
Quick, because we have
see
another
what
caller.
Mia Motley is doing? See what Mia Motley is doing with Interpol? With the Interpol impact? That's a starting point.
Okay, we have a caller. I can't remember from where. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. Please, will you all discuss the fact that the big trucks have taken over the streets?
Okay.
That the people don't want to hear the big trucks.
Okay.
We want to see steel pans on the street once more.
Okay.
Could you all accommodate us with our steel pans on the streets instead of 7 big trucks in one van, causing bacchanal, causing a man like Big Mike for 40 years have to complain?
Yes.
He had a right to complain. I want you all to say that. Thank you very much. I love Karen. I love you. I love the program.
Thank you, caller. Sorry, we have another call. Guys, I'm not sure if Karen is hearing the callers recently, but we have another caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Karen.
I'm here. Yes.
Morning.
Yes. Yeah, I want to touch on the carnival. They said this was the mother of all carnivals, as they have it today. But I think the mother would have aborted this carnival because I would have gone through And I've looked at all the rural areas and stuff where we used to have nice masked people dressing up in feathers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You have seen none of those. I think Carnival is now coming a big shot thing. Not for poor people again. Karen, another thing. I don't know when last you would have visited Petrotrin Pointe-à-Pierre. Yesterday I had the opportunity of going there. And the walkway, the place is so badly kept. It's looking like a powerhouse, you know, Karen. I don't know. We go on, Cliff. Take care.
Thank you, caller. Well, I'm hearing the phone ring, but Karen, there seems to be a implication. We've seen with COVID and beyond that those with enough economic means are relatively unaffected, compared to the rest of the country. And now Carnival might just be another exposure of that situation where those with more economic means were able to enjoy their Carnival, but not necessarily the rest, or at least to the extent.
Okay, so I'll give you a simple answer because we have our time is not on our side. I think what you really need to do is what they had done up to 1997 with CSO, do what they call the Gini coefficient, which is really looking at the income, how the income is distributed in a country. And then you will get a good idea of what percent of the population enjoys how much of our GDP and what percent does. And you get a good idea of the inequality in the country.
We have a call on the line from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I'm a gentleman today.
How you solve this problem certainly is not a regular listener to your program, because I have repeatedly said how you solve this problem. You enforce all your laws, and you report on these in your annual administrative reports, and have these in the parliamentary library where people could access it. But I want to mention something I heard last week.
Yeah.
That I heard some strange statement, and it had to do with Pigeon Point and Tobago and what. And people seem to assume that because the beach is owned by the state, they have the right to access all these beaches passing through private land, and that is not so.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few places where people have acquired the right with passage of time, like in Mayao and whatnot. And Tobago is a strange place. Tobago is the only place that when they came in the union with Trinidad, they brought one of their laws. And that was a law to give them access to this beach.
Yeah.
Caller?
Which is a good thing.
I think we
That's
lost the caller.
a public road within 3 chains of the beach. You can access it through private land. Now, what the landowner could do is put a place where you could pass.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with Pigeon Point, the nearest public road was the Milford Road.
Yes.
That road going into Swallows was a private estate road, right? And that was more than 3 chains, because 3 chains is just about 200 feet. And that is why they could have done what they did there. And what they did was a good thing, you know. Because these people who making noise about Pigeon Point, they didn't want to go to the beaches.
Well, caller,
But they wanted to go and harass the tourists who was in Pigeon Point, who paid their money, and who had the Pigeon Point facilities.
But
that was the reason behind it.
Which to some extent is true, but I will say this: the government, however, now owns, from what I understand, I could be wrong, it's no longer privately owned.
Of having restrictions.
Do you remember the song in Barbados, Government Boots, Government Boots? Why you wouldn't remember it? I was a student at Cape Town, but it was a big
remember
thing.
that song.
With Tom, you know why that tune came about? Because they wanted to stop people from having access to their own beaches, so that the tourists in their own country, how long are you going to carry on colonialism?
You see, I think the thing is. The thing
but
is,
you don't expect to have access to every single square.
No, Professor, I understand that it was legal, because it's not as though the government shut it down. I just found it was very much controversial, and politically convenient to be against it when it was private, but then when the public sector took it over, when the government took it over, all of a sudden we keep the barrier and the fees and everything, etc., etc. But I understand what you're saying, and to your
and by the way, do not say that the tourists are being harassed. I have a feeling a lot of them come to Trinidad.
No, but Karen, he is right about that. To some extent, tourists, I have seen that happen. Tourists can be harassed.
I have seen that. I worked for 3 years in Tobago.
Yeah, I even know of one instance where someone who is a local resident, but she has a foreign accent, was being harassed. And as soon as she mentioned that she lives in Trinidad, they scattered like flies. Yeah, they just... But Professor, as to your first point, yes, it is true. We need to enforce our law and order and have accountability vis-a-vis annual administrative reports. But I think Karen's point is how do we start? Because really and truly, it seems as though...
The Chinese say the longest journey starts with a single step.
Right, so the first step is...
Pigeon Point.
We're past Pigeon Point, Karen. I want to...
No, can I just say, no, because Pigeon Point, I know growing up, Pigeon Point meant something, like how Country Club meant something in Trinidad. Yes. That's what I'll say.
Well, the unfortunate part is Country Club has turned into a shell of a thing. I have been to Country Club a few times when it was operating. It is a shame.
What's wrong with that Country Club?
It is a shame, yes. There's nothing wrong with it. It is a shame, though, that it has more or less fallen apart.
We have a lot of clubs in East Drive, I wouldn't want to go.
All right, thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor. I think we're more or less out of time for phone calls there, but I just want to address one of the last things he said. The professor is right. Basically, the fact that we don't enforce our law and order is the problem. The thing is, though, can we depend on the public servants, the politicians, without any sort of influence? Can we just rely on them to fix the issue all of a sudden? And I think that goes to your point with Interpol.
And tourism, implement and enforce. Just one thing, Maracas. You go Maracas now. Okay, it's an improvement. But when you go to the big countries where they have, Greek islands and they have a booming tourism industry, the thing is done in a very, everything is done in a way that is upmarket. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that in this country?
And I think this is what people also need to understand. We don't have that much high-end tourism. Yes, we have Hyatt. Hyatt is, with regards to the age of the nation, relatively new. Hilton is not necessarily new, but when it came time to have foreign celebrities come in, it's not as though we had a lot of hotels that could deal with people of that level. And in the end of the day, Tobago, without any sort of planning or regulation, left its own devices. Not the government now, we're talking the individual private stakeholders. Tobago has turned into more of a somewhere between budget and best price, best deal sort of business model. The high-end model in Tobago does not work, despite the fact that the airlines keep telling the government, we need more high-end rooms, we need more high-end rooms, but it doesn't work, and that's why Magdalena is up for sale right now. Coco Reef, I also believe, is up for sale right now. And those are the two high-end hotels of the island. There are reasons why they're up for sale. Well, exactly.
My God.
That's the best. Right. So now, with regards, there's one point that a caller made that I want to get back into, and that is, I think it's interesting that a caller is saying that they don't want the big trucks, they want steel pan back in the road. And I don't know how Carnival, I don't know how Carnival used to do it, but I assume, right, steel pans, because I remember seeing that's why Panorama, the steel pans, everything is on wheels, because to some extent it would have been toted through the roads, I would imagine. And I know Etienne Charles, he has tried to bring brass back onto the road, and maybe there needs to be like a pioneer on that level. to bring pan back into the road, to make it seem prestigious.
Part of integrate it.
Yes.
And can I just say the last word? Ministry of Tourism and Culture. It's their responsibility.
It's the same way, Karen.
As I would him, that's what the minister's supposed to do.
True.
Get on with your job.
Well, the sad part is you have, like tourism, because you have the tourism, this tourism company, that tourism company, the tourism ministry, the secretary. There are so many government bodies of tourism. Carnival also has the minister of, well, it's the same minister, ironically, but
Exactly,
the NCC.
please. I was on Titco board already.
However many bodies and state entities to deal with these things. And there seems to be a disconnect. But this is the funny thing.
Can I just tell you one joke? Can I give you one joke, though?
Quick.
That you probably don't know? Those little houses that were built around the savannah. When Ali Muhammad was chairman, I was on the board. And he gave me the freedom to develop these, to remove all the tarpaulin and the white, all that. I said, this is the first world country, people coming around the savannah. You're going to see that? And that's when those little houses were built. And they said it wouldn't go to last more than 5 years. Look how long they've lasted. So you just need good leadership. It may not be what we wanted, but it was a beginning. So we can do it. That's my point. We can do it.
Here's my thing to kind of sum up this discussion. So we've seen now where one, to be fair, international trumpeter, Etienne Charles is not limited. He's not just a local boy. He's from the soil. But Etienne is falling into the boots. That international trumpeter. He brought prestige back to brass, right? To some extent. My thing is, what we're calling for is an environment that would allow more prestige with pan, more prestige with traditional mass, more prestige with soca monarch, right?
It can be done.
It can be done. It's just, will we have the will as well as the ingenuity, right, to make it happen? And I think one of the things that, I don't know if we said this on air, but it seems as though the government of the day, so this is not just a PNM thing, right? Don't just be a hater. No. The government of the day, the government of the day, whichever party it is, they tend to want to just throw money at a problem as opposed to trying to think of a plan to solve the problem. That's all I'll say about that. We are out of time. Thank you, Karen, for being with me once again. Of course, we will look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday, your usual time. And of course, folks, thanks to all the callers for calling in with all their points. Even those that disagree with us, we hear you. We fully understand. And your points are very much valid and correct. We were looking at, though, the environment of the land in TNT. If we want to make it a good day, you know, we have to work for it, folks. We can't just wait for it to happen. I think that's where we've reached in life. On behalf of all of us here at WASN, my name is Sean Michael Small. That's Karen Teixeira. We will see you on Talking Point tomorrow morning. Goodbye.